The 2024 season gave the Commanders hope. Now they just got to stay healthy. Welcome back to With the First Pick. On this edition of The Perfect Fix, we're going to fix the Washington Commanders. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Rand Carthon. And before we get going here, Commanders fans, I'm interested in what you guys think your biggest needs are. And let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Is it just the fact that you have to stay healthy? Is it fixing the defense? Is it OC concerns? Let us know what you think. All right, Rand. Jaden Daniels got hurt. And that was it. They finished 5-12. He started just 7 games. Only started 2 games after week 8. I thought Marcus Mariota did an admirable job as a backup, but he is in fact a backup who is going to be a free agent very soon. Of course, the year before in 2024, they went 12-5 and made it all the way to the NFC title game. So the team, as I mentioned, has moved on from their offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury. They've hired former QB David Blau to replace him, and they also named DJ Williams, son of the great Doug Williams, as the new quarterbacks coach. What are the expectations when you're moving on from someone established like Kingsbury, had so much success with Jaden Daniels, and now that David Blau and DJ Williams and the rest of that staff are in the mix?
Well, I mean, you go all the way back to Kingsbury background, and the one thing that he's always been able to do is develop quarterbacks. And you just go through his history, and the way his offense runs and flows, he understands truly what fits his offense best. And I don't think we give Marcus Mariota enough credit for how he stepped in and played in that offense, and how him and just Kingsbury just seem to be on the same page. And I don't know that we've ever seen Marcus Mariota that comfortable as an NFL quarterback. So that's more of an ode to Cliff Kingsbury and his abilities to structure an offense and call plays. But you talked about it. Hired David Blau, now who was last year's assistant quarterback coach, and he stepped more into the quarterback coaching role when Tavita Pritchard got the head coaching job over at Stanford in midseason. And so he had been primarily in that room. And so here's what I want to say. David Blau, I know that's not a name. People probably know him from being a backup in the league. And I believe his wife was an Olympian hurdler and was successful that way. So people probably know the name that way. But he was a name that was starting to generate a lot of attention around the league as a potential coordinator candidate. And the early word I got was that he was in strong consideration for the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator job, where he played and he was the backup and had a couple starts there and played pretty well. And so, because if you remember, Kingsbury was fired, and it seemed like they just jumped quick, to the offensive coordinator role and got David Blau. And I think, not saying that he wasn't deserving, but I think a lot of that was based off of another team showing interest, and this was their opportunity to keep him. The other part for me, for this football team, before we even get to the players and all of that, is now you have to find another defensive coordinator. Joe Witt Jr. had the play calling duties taken away from him at some point in the season. Dan Quinn stepped in and started calling plays, and then they obviously moved on from him. Some of the guys that they've interviewed, or at least have requested interviews, was Jonathan Gannon, the former Arizona Cardinals head coach, Denard Wilson, the Tennessee Titans D coordinator, Joe Cullen, the defensive line coach from Kansas City, Carl Scott, the pass game coordinator for Seattle, and Brian Flores, defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. And so I'd be interested to see where they go, there next. Now, again, you do always have the fail-safe that your head coach has called defensive plays and can call defensive plays. But I know Dan Quinn probably wants to be more of the CEO of the whole operation, as opposed to being down in the trenches and game planning every week. So I will say Denard Wilson is a DMV native. Went to DeMatha High School, played at University of Maryland. And so it'll be interesting. And I know we've talked about this team. You'll hear Denard Wilson's name again, because whenever John Harbaugh gets hired, whether it's with the Giants or whomever, Denard worked under Harbs, and I know Harbs thought highly of him as a potential D coordinator candidate. And then you have Anthony Weaver that'll be available as a defensive candidate for those guys, as will Zach Orr. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Denard Wilson, and will Washington pull the trigger there with him. But all quality names that can help them. But I think they definitely need to get these coordinators hired ASAP to allow them to figure out what they're going to do. And then we can move into the player acquisition phase.
No, absolutely. Shout out DMV, Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. If you know, you know, I guess. If you don't, that's what it means. All right, next up, let's look onto the old hood here and lean on your expertise like I always do, Rand. And, correct my mistakes because you're a fact checker. The Commanders are sixth in available salary cap space. According to my homework, they have roughly $76.4 million available this spring, which is fantastic news because they have a bunch of needs. Here are some of the players that are going to be free agents in a few weeks that are currently on the roster. And, oh boy, there are a lot of them. Deebo Samuel, who they traded for, of course, Bobby Wagner, the aforementioned Marcus Mariota, Zach Ertz, who unfortunately tore his ACL towards the end of the season, Von Miller, who was in his 30s, led the team in sacks. I don't know if that's a situation that you want to be the case. Not that Von Miller can't do it, but he needs some help. Austin Eckler's another name who was injured. Andrew Wiley, Noah Brown. A lot of these guys are injured. And I'll mention Tress Way because you get on me for not mentioning specialists. He's important to what they do as well. And Jeremy McNichols. I mean, the list goes on and on. Traylon Burks, who they acquired late. So tell me, you have a ton of cap space, but you're also losing a ton of guys, and you have a bunch of needs on defense. What are we doing?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you put Tressway's name in there because I have him listed just because I didn't figure that you would actually talk about him. But if all those names that you mentioned were key components of this football team. Right. And then you go back. Bobby Wagner is obviously one of the best leaders on the football field. You're going to find one of the most consistent football players probably ever, just in terms of his production and the way he's played. You got to see who the D coordinator is going to be and how Bobby fits best in that system. And so for me, having 76 million in cap space, and understanding GM Adam Peters' background. Adam Peters came up as a college scout. And so he's always been a guy that's been focused on the draft, and that was his MO. But what they did when him and Dan Quinn came in, they mixed the draft picks with quality free agents. Now I think what you're going to end up seeing now is this is where the flip happens. This is where they tend to get away from the free agency side of it and start leaning more towards the draft and being able to draft, develop, and re-sign their own guys. Now, they'll have free agents sprinkled in here and there, but I don't think you'll see them go heavy free agents. Another name that, we didn't get a chance to talk about, Andrew Wiley, who's been a versatile piece for them up front on the offensive line. But, again, a lot of what they've had to do because of injuries, and the quickest way to build their team was, spend money in free agency, trade for some guys, and then mix those guys in. And speaking of trading for some guys, a guy that I think they can get even more cap space from is looking at redoing Marshawn Lattimore's deal. In my opinion, he hadn't played to the level that he's capable of playing for them, and he's had some off-the-field concerns that have popped up since his time in Washington. So he's due to make $18.5 million, which for him and his level of play and what he's capable of playing is not a bad number. But $16.5 million of that is his paragraph 5, which is his salary, and he has a $2 million roster bonus. So you'll be able to break up some of that 16.5 salary and then be able to move that around, make it a bonus, push it into a sign-in bonus, add some voidable years on the back end of that deal, and that'll give you even more, money for you to play with. But for me, this is, and they only have 6 picks this year. And so this is a situation where I think they need to get to the core essence of what Adam Peters believes, and that's drafting, signing, and developing your own.
This is sort of a crazy question, but I'm going to ask it. Would you rather re-sign Deebo Samuel at a higher price tag or bring back Noah Brown, who is reliable when he is healthy?
Well, and I'm going to remove my Deebo Samuel bias because we did buy my son a Deebo Samuel jersey for Christmas this year. Deebo is his favorite player. But if I had to pay Deebo $30 million versus a Noah Brown that's probably going to cost me 4 or 5, I think personally I'd rather bring in a young draft pick. Okay. If I'm being honest, over that. Now again, you only have 6 picks. That's a 1, a 3, a 5, 2 6s, and a 7. Right. So they're kind of, again, in a hamstrung position where they don't have a second round pick. right? Which is going to be a potential spot where you can get a quality receiver. You can find good quality receivers in the third round. I believe that's where Terry McLaurin was drafted, was a third round pick. But I think the key thing for them, I'll say this for Deebo Samuel. Deebo is going to always be able to make plays. That's what he is. But for me, again, it would tend to lead to what type of system is David Blau going to run? I don't foresee him running something similar to what Cliff Kingsbury ran. I think the system will revamp a little bit more, and I think it will become a little bit more quarterback friendly because of David Blau's background. But for me, the ultimate decision wouldn't necessarily come down to what we had to pay Deebo, is what the fit is going to be for Deebo.
That makes sense. And you mentioned they had those 6 picks, including the 7th overall pick. The reason they don't have a second rounder, they sent it to Houston for Laramie Tunsil, whose contract will be up after the 2026 season. He was injured last few weeks of the season, I believe, but obviously you want him to anchor the left side when Jaden Daniels gets healthy. All right, let's play the game here. At 7th overall, which of these are the highest impact in 2026 for the Washington Commanders? I'll give you some draft picks, and you tell me what you think here. Auburn edge rusher Keldrick Falk, who feels like a Quinn guy. Maybe you think Reuben Bain Jr. or David Bailey makes more sense because of their production, but Falk is certainly a high upside player who had a pretty good season. Arbel Reese, the off-ball linebacker / edge rusher from Ohio State. Maybe Jordan Tyson, wide receiver at Arizona State. Caleb Downs, Ohio State safety. Their defense struggled, and I think that's an understatement. And then Spencer Fano gives you versatility as a right tackle and maybe kick him side to right guard, who played right on the right side at Utah. Any of those guys jump out at you as guys that gets this train back on the tracks quickly?
Well, I'll say this. I do like Jordan Tyson's fit opposite of Terry McLaurin. I think he can play that Z role where he's catching the ball over the middle. He has run after the catch skills. And then, the more you talk to people, and again, this is just my opinion, so I know producer Sharon's going to have something slick to say. I think the league is truly split on Reuben Bain. I've talked to several people about it just to be, have my own checks and balances, right? And I've talked to guys who love him and guys who I respect, love his game. But then there are some guys where they're just like whatever on him. And so even the same thing with Keldrick Falk. Like Keldrick Falk is a really good young player, but he hadn't been able to step into that spot of being a dynamic pass rusher. And that's what you're really looking for, a guy that can get after the passer. And I think we talked about it before on the show, like, what are you valuing more, a dominant run defending edge rusher or that guy that can get after the quarterback, right? And so I think that's going to be a spot for them, a point of contention. I think all those guys fit the system. I think in a perfect world, if Arvell Reese was there, I don't know that they would even wait for the card to get turned in. I think they would sprint up there and to get a player like that because of his versatility and what he's able to do. But this could be another potential spot where you see them trade back. And this could be another trade back scenario because a trade back scenario would at least net them possibly a 2, depending on how far they go back, or they could pick up an additional 3rd and maybe a 4th even in that scenario. So don't sleep on that, as well as them playing the board and understanding how deep certain positions are for them at positions of need, and then being able to pick up more picks.
I will say this, looking at this graphic that we have up there, the Commanders under different GM ownership, head coaches, they crushed it when it comes to these high picks they've had. RG3 in 2012 certainly flashed before he got injured. Chase Young, Jaden Daniels, LeVar Arrington, shout out Western PA, Chris Samuels, Trent Williams, and Brandon Scherf there. The other thing when I look at Chase Young's name, Rand, is you could argue that Keldrick Falk and Chase Young look similar when they get off the bus, but Chase Young's production at Ohio State, there was no question that he was going to be a high-round pick. And to your larger point, Keldrick Falk, while he's flashed, hasn't quite put that together yet. So let's get to the old playoffs part of this conversation here. This feels like a Jaden Daniel health situation. We'll see what David Blau does, and also getting some guys healthy and fixing a few pieces on defense situation where you're right back in the mix in the NFC East.
No, I think they're. I'll just keep it short. I think they're a little bit further off than people believe.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll find out together. All right. Yeah. Let us know in the comments what you think if you're a Commanders fan.